Hey everybody, Joe Cardoza here. Welcome to Nuts and Bolts Sports. Today we had the chance to talk to one of the hottest up-and-coming head coaches in the world of college basketball. We're talking about none other than Todd Golden, head coach of the University of San Francisco Dons men's basketball team. Boasting a 54-32 career record, this 36-year-old upstart has the Dons on the brink of greatness this season. Ahead of a big matchup against rival Gonzaga, our very own Larry Bazzani had a chance to sit down with the head coach and discuss the season and the upcoming game. We now go out to San Francisco and talk to Larry and Coach.
He's on several 40 under 40 lists in the basketball circles. He's won 20 in two of his first three campaigns. Todd Golden, thank you for joining us today, head coach of the San Francisco Dons.
I appreciate you having me. It's good to be here with you.
Now, I just want to walk through a little bit of your career. And you started off, you played for Randy Bennett, and then you worked for Bruce Pearl, and of course Kyle Smith. How did each of those experiences shape you as a leader and your philosophy for basketball as a whole?
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate to play with and work with some really good coaches, and I think all of them in different ways have helped me build my foundation for the way I think of the game, the way I coach my guys. And, Randy and Kyle are very similar in terms of being, program-oriented, very analytical, very plan-oriented in the way they approach things, where they try to find, incremental advantages in the margins, whether it's in substitution patterns or recruiting in the off-season. They're always trying to find an edge. And so I learned a lot from them in those ways, whereas Bruce was a polar opposite in the sense of, he was way more focused on, building the program, promoting the recruiting piece. He worked really, really hard on. He was more of a motivator, a guy that, he would try to get his players to run through a wall for him, which he was very successful doing. But, all three of those guys, like I said, I've been able to pull different strengths from them and try to, throw them into a pot and build it all together to get where I am today.
I want to circle back around to a word that you used to describe both Coach Bennett and Coach Smith. You said they're very analytical. In layman's terms, tell me, what is Nerdball?
It's, it really, I guess the best way to describe it is to, try to find different data points to evaluate whether it's the student athletes or your program, and when you get that information, really just analyzing it and deciding what to do from there, and taking more of a cut and dry approach where you're not relying on your eye test or not relying upon what at least public perception might lead you to believe is the right thing to do. And I think those guys have done, Randy and Kyle have been very successful because of that, trying to zig when other people are zagging, trying to look where, in recruiting, if a lot of people are recruiting high school guys, they would recruit older transfers. As that tide has started to shift, maybe going back to some of the undervalued high school guys, but always just looking and seeing what everybody else is doing and trying to find advantages, where maybe they're not looking.
In recent years, we've seen the transfer portal open up. Now you've got the NIL. How would you say this has changed not only the way that you recruit, but I guess in a sense you also kind of have to re-recruit at the end of the year? Has this changed the way that you coach? Has this changed your philosophy at all? And of course, obviously, you're always looking in the portals.
Yeah, honestly, the way I explain it to people, I think college basketball has changed more over the past 2 years than it had in the previous 20.
Sure.
And I think it's one of those things where, again, you sit back and you look and you see where things are going. And if you're not keeping a close eye on the transfer portal, if you're not understanding the rules in regards to guys being able to have a one-time transfer exemption, there's a lot of things that they've done to empower the student athletes in regards to their choices, which is great. And I think in a sense, as coaches, if you use it the right way, it could benefit the programs too. And I think you've seen that looking at our program, bringing in guys like Yayan Masovsky, Pat Tape, Gabe, Zane, Vova. This year we've added some really talented players, but also we have that camaraderie and that culture here in our program where we were able to keep guys like Jamari and Khalil, who had options to go, whether grad transfer and play elsewhere or go play professionally. They wanted to stay here and help us continue to build this program. So I think right now we have a really healthy balance having that culture and having that buy-in and that nucleus of guys that have grown within our program from their freshman year, and then sprinkling in guys that maybe didn't start in our program but have a lot of the same intangibles and a lot of the same things that we look for in student athletes, and we're able to add them to the group, and they've been able to seamlessly fit in.
You mentioned Khalil Shabazz and Jamari Bouye, of course. Now, Jamari's had just an incredible run, has a very good chance of being the first Don drafted in a very long time. What have each of them meant to this program as a whole?
Yeah, I'll start with Khalil. And just, he obviously was a kid that we took as a transfer at first, and he was a great example of Nerdball, being a very good producer at the D2 level as a freshman, averaging, I think, 15, 5, and 4. And you look at his his quickness, and you saw his production, and you realize, hey, this guy could play at the Division I level on a good team. And he's come in, and his attitude is just amazing. His leadership is infectious. His approach, his work ethic, and his energy is just really something that you can't replicate. And what I'm most proud of him for is, after last year, he was debating on what his future held, and I challenged him to come back and get his degree because he was a year short of that. And to his credit, he bought into that, and he came back, and he'll be walking in May with his degree in hand. And he's given this program and university 4 years of his life, and I think he is the definition of a Don. He's a guy that came in and really just always put the program first, and I'm very grateful for him for that. Jamari he's a special one to me for many reasons, but he would really has been so important in terms of the way we've built the program since I took over 3 years ago, because he bought in as soon as I got the job. He was the one that led bringing all 14 guys that we had within the program at that point in terms of returning, which was huge in terms of the continuity of keeping this thing going the right direction. And then, the decision that, will stick with me forever is after last year, and especially the way we finished, coming off a 3-week COVID pause, going 1-6 down the stretch. It would have been very easy for him to jump ship and say, hey, I'm going to go play at Kentucky my last year. I'm going to go to Duke. He could have gone really anywhere he wanted to go if he wanted to do that. And he said, no, Coach, I'm either going to look at my professional options or stay here. USF gave me an opportunity. I want to stay loyal to that. And, that domino falling when he decided to come back for a 5th year, was everything in regards to this team and this program and these student athletes gelling the way we have this year and becoming a top 20, 25 team. That decision, was incredibly impactful for the trajectory of this program. And I'll be grateful to him for that for as long as I live. It's something that is really given us a great springboard. And when you have an elite player like that who's bought in and leads the right way, it makes our job as coaches a lot easier.
Talked a little bit about Khalil and also about Jamari. Tomorrow is, of course, senior night.
Yeah.
Aside from, I hear there's a pretty big game going on. What can you tell me about some of the other seniors that you have? And, of course, I say that with a certain reverence because we've all been through so much in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I cannot even begin to imagine what it's like being a student athlete right now during these times. If you could just kind of, open the kimono a little bit and just kind of, what has that been like over the last 2 years?
Yeah, well,
I remember earlier this year a game that was sort of an impromptu game against Loyola Chicago,
right.
And a couple of other games got scratched. And this has been not only challenging for the players, but I guess for you as well. So just what have these last 2 years been like?
Yeah, you know what? It's been interesting, to say the least, because after we finished our first year with a great showing in the West Coast Conference Tournament, we were going to go to the NIT. We had 22 or 23 wins, whatever it was, and I just felt like we were at a great point to start really building this program. We had great momentum, and
right.
Then a week or two later, COVID hits, and next thing you know, we're sending everybody home, and we're getting locked down, and it threw our world, on our, whatever that saying is, on our head. We were just kind of stuck and didn't really know what was going to be coming down the pike next. We didn't know if we were going to have a season. We didn't know when we were going to get to be back together with our guys. And, so we tried to get through the best we could. And I think last year was a get through it year, as
Right.
as cliche as that may sound.
Sure.
But you're in San Francisco, which is probably one of the most COVID conscious places in the world. You're trying to navigate through a NCAA Division I season where they weren't allowing us to play home games for a considerable portion of the year. We were traveling all over the country just to get games in, without crowds there. So there was a lot of great things by being able to play, but it also left a lot to be desired, and it kind of just felt like we were doing it to do it. And then COVID hit our program, and we had multiple players and coaches get it, and now we're shut down for 3 weeks, and now we're trying to get back going at the end of the year. So there were a lot of challenges, and I think there were a lot of things that transpired that made it difficult to continue building. But again, we as a staff, I thought, did a really good job of keeping the group together after the year and keeping guys looking more to the long-term vision of the program in that sense. And again, getting those guys like JB and Khalil back, adding Yayan and Pat and Gabe, it was huge. Yayan Masalski is a guy that's come in as a fifth-year senior and been probably the third or fourth best player in the league, to this point with JB. I think those two are right behind Chet and Timmy, as the best players in the league, and just really added just a great veteran leadership, great inside presence, and just an incredible attitude. Since he's been here, everything is been putting the team first and trying to help Chris, CG and I lead these guys the right way. And Pat and Gabe have been super veteran. Gabe has an extra year, so we won't be honoring him tomorrow night, but Pat, Yayan, and Khalil and JB will honor, and all those guys have been super impactful for our success this year.
Now, of course, you played at St. Mary's, and so that program has quite a bit of international flavor. I believe, I may have my dates mixed up, but I want to say that you were a senior, I believe, when Patty Mills arrived.
Correct. Yep.
I get it right sometimes.
No, it's perfect.
And obviously you're playing. We're here in San Francisco. It's a very international city. You've also played internationally. How does coming from a program like the Gales, coaching in an international city like San Francisco, how do both of those components influence the way that you recruit, and particularly internationally?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, transparently, we're going to always try to do the best we can in our backyard. When I say that, I mean Northern California all the way down to the central part, Fresno-ish, and that anywhere from Fresno north all the way up to Sac. We have to do a really good job of knowing who's here and doing what we can to get the best guys we can. But after that, it might be international in regards to the best fit for our program. Even more so than Southern California or Arizona or the Pacific Northwest, because San Francisco is a name that carries weight internationally.
Sure.
And that's something that if I'm recruiting a kid from let's just say Texas, and he's down between San Francisco and Creighton. Creighton is a program that's super well respected in the United States, and Big East and all that stuff. But if I'm recruiting a kid from, the eastern bloc of Russia, and he's talking to his family about San Francisco or Creighton, that family is going to recognize San Francisco a lot more. And that goes, for any part of Europe, whether it's Western or Eastern, Spain, Germany, whatever it is. I think San Francisco is something that, a family or a kid can point to and say, oh, I've heard of that. That sounds, that I get that. I know that place, over some of, maybe even some of the SEC schools like Mississippi State or something like that, where it's not as geographically recognizable. And so we will always try to recruit internationally really hard. Maybe not as much Australia, but a lot of the Europeans for sure. And I think we've done a good job that way.
I think there's also the component, again, that because it is such an international city, that you will find a pocket of people who share that culture of wherever you're from. You can, whether it's Spanish, Russian, Italian, French, there's just so many languages that are spoken here, and that I think that does lend to, again, the international component. You touched on something a second ago. How do you make a kid from a small town feel at home in a big city like this? Do you recruit them differently? Do you approach their family differently? How do you build those type of inroads?
Yeah, it's a good question and a tough question. And I think the best way to answer it is, we try to do three things when we recruit. First of all, we want to learn a lot about the kid and his family to make sure we have a good understanding of what they're made of and kind of what's important to them, from an off-the-court standpoint, to make sure that they kind of fit in with our culture. And then the second thing is an academic, screening of sorts. This isn't an easy school. This isn't a school where, you're going to bring guys that are just qualifying for NCAA and come here and have success. They won't. You need guys that have a good academic background, or at least a high academic, willingness to really work at it. And those guys that have the work ethic and have that foundation of wanting to be good academically, they do very well for us. And so you don't have to be the best student, but you have to have that willingness to work hard in the classroom. And once we get through those two things, then it's obviously a big thing about basketball and the way they can fit in the program. And I feel like when we get through those three steps, it kind of works itself out. And those guys that, no matter where they're from, big city, small city, by the time we get through those things, we're going to know if they're going to fit well here or not. And so at that point, I think we kind of know and decide how hard we maybe want to go after a kid, or maybe we want to pull back and allow them to look at other things. But, because of how deep we go into the process, like, I think we weed those situations out and don't have many situations where we're trying to kind of fit a square peg into a round hole recruiting-wise.
I think about, I took up golf when I was in my early 20s, and very quickly you learn that you can go from 120 to about 90 if you get after it. But the hard part is going from 90 down to about a 72 if you're a golfer.
I love golf.
Okay. And I look at where the program is now, and obviously there are a couple here in the West Coast Conference that they're national programs at this point.
Yeah.
How do you close the gap or continue to close the gap? There's also a rich history here, which I think to maybe to a grandparent or a parent might be a sellable point. They remember when this program was very, very special.
Yeah.
How do you continue to work to close that gap so that ultimately you have a real shot at recruiting some of the players that other programs are able to successfully recruit?
It's the $1 million question, literally and figuratively, probably. But I think it's like the truth is, we have to meet the moment. And what I mean by that is, we've put ourselves in a position where we're top 25 Ken Palm, we're top 20 Bart Torvik, we're top 27 in the net. This is the best team that USF has had for 40 years.
Yes.
This team's, and this isn't a disrespectful comment to the '99 tournament team, but they made the tournament because they had a late run in the conference tournament and got in on the auto bid. This team is really the first team since they shut the program down that has a chance to get in at large,
right?
Which is incredibly unique. And so we need to meet the moment. We need to make sure that we build off of this as opposed to letting this be a once in a while situation. And so what do I mean by that? We need to make sure we get our practice facility squared away. We need to make sure that we're supporting the program at a top 25 level. That this is college basketball program is really not much different from an operational standpoint as a startup business or a family business, in the sense of you're going to get what you put into it. If you really invest in it, if you make sure you have great people and good talent in the program, it's going to work out and you're going to have success. But if you're not investing into the coaching staff, if you're not investing into the student athletes, if you're not trying to continue to build as opposed to just tread water, it's just going to be a lot more difficult to continue to do it. I'm not saying it'll be impossible, but I think it would be unrealistic to expect continuous success if that investment doesn't meet the moment.
Speaking of investments and the facilities, etc., I have to say, War Memorial looks so much nicer than when I went a few gray hairs ago. So, but in a nutshell, last year or a couple years ago now, I guess, Don's played at the Chase Center.
Yeah.
And is it within the realm of possibility as this program continues to grow? I think of Georgetown back on the East Coast. They play all of their games at what is now...
It used to be Verizon or whatever.
Yeah, that's the Capital One Arena. When I was growing up, there was the Capital Center.
Right.
And they stopped playing all of their of their home games. I want to say it was late 70s, early 80s on campus. As this program continues to grow, and I realize that it is a very, very tight sports market here in the Bay Area. I mean,
Right.
You got the Niners, you've got the Giants made it to the playoffs last year. So there's only so far that
And the Warriors.
and the Warriors are pretty. I hear they're pretty good too. There's only so far that entertainment dollar can really go. But by the same token, as this program continues to grow, what would you say is the probability of being able to host more and more games at the Chase Center and allow more and more that fan base to continue to grow?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a natural progression for this program, and we've had two great experiences in the Chase Center already with that Princeton win 2 years ago, and then obviously the Davidson game this year, which is going to end up being a very valuable win for us. And it raises the profile of the program, obviously internally, from a student athlete experience standpoint. Like, you think those guys like playing in the Chase Center, being able to go in those locker rooms, being able to shoot around on those courts. I mean, these guys are dreaming about playing in those arenas regularly. So when you give them that opportunity, I think it goes a long way. And then you look at the external in terms of the recruiting, in terms of the fan base being built up, that NBA experience tied in with the college game. I think it's very valuable. And so it's a delicate balance because of how we're playing, we have a very good home court advantage, and we have, we're starting to sell this thing out and get great crowds, which is something that we haven't been able to say for the last however many years. But at the same time, as we continue to try to elevate the program, playing more games in the Chase Center, I think is something that could provide a lot of value for us.
You're already sitting at 22 wins this year. Obviously, as we're having this conversation, tomorrow Gonzaga comes into town. The last leg of this schedule is going to be incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
Walk me through a little bit of what this next month is going to look like as we move into it and March Madness begins.
Yeah, it's the biggest challenge that I think this team has faced all year, and not just our players but for our staff as well. It's trying to stay in the moment, and it's we as a team, as a program, had a very clear goal when we got together on June 15th. It was to make the NCAA tournament, and that's something that we've been working towards all year. But at the same time, as we work towards that, we have to remember that if we don't take care of our business today, that all that stuff might go away. And so, our message to the guys really over the past 2 weeks has been, let's just try to get better each day. Let's get better today in practice. Obviously, we have a game tomorrow. Let's try to win that game. But then on Friday, when it's over, we're not worried about the WCC tournament. We're not worried about the NCAA tournament. We're worried about preparing for San Diego, doing whatever we can do on Friday with our bodies and our minds to make sure that we're physically ready and mentally ready to go on Saturday. So our preparation is important, and then on Saturday it's about playing another game again. So I think it's really all those things in our minds will work themselves out if we can stay present and make sure we take care of our business every day.
You spoke a little bit earlier about recruiting. I think of the University of Miami's model when they're talking about how they recruited football players, and they said, we're roping off the state of Miami as ours. You hit on that a little bit. You essentially said that from Fresno north,
Yeah.
You want to make every recruit, you want them to all be in play. How do you continue to develop those relationships with the coaches and with the players and their families, so that this really becomes, you develop the brand identity of the Dons program as a whole, as a Northern California program? Because as where we're sitting right now, you've got one of the best programs in the state.
Yeah. No, I think it's there's little things incrementally, obviously, with relationships and stuff that you can do to continue to build those relationships and provide those that presence. But I might be making this a little too simple, but I really do think winning takes care of a lot of that stuff.
Sure,
if we can continue to stroke 20-win seasons every year and continue to get better, and I think everything will work itself out in terms of getting more exposure, getting on TV more, getting asked to play more marquee games in the non-conference. Winning solves a lot of problems, and so I think if we can win and continue to win at a high level, that those guys will want to come here. It's generally speaking, it would be tough for USF to beat Cal on a recruit, but I think at this point, I like our chances against them because we've proven to be successful, and we've proven that we have a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. That's something more than either Pac-12 school can say right now. And I'm not trying to take shots at them, but it's just where we are right now.
Coach Golden, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I want to thank Coach Golden for his time and, of course, our friends at the University of San Francisco, as well as Larry. Once again, I am Joe Cardoza, and you've been listening to Nuts and Bolts Sports. Until next time, stay safe.